Welcome to Tales of the Basement podcast, the newest place for all things nerd, culture, discussions, debates, and hot takes. I'm Joe, and I'm here with my good friend Josh. Say hi, Josh.
Hello.
Well, I just got to say, let's just start out with giving Baldur's Gate 3 and Larian Studios the credit that they deserve.
Yeah. Actually, I think they did I think it was a well-deserving game to get a record of winning all 5 major Game of the Year rewards.
That's incredible. They won Game of the Year awards from Golden Joysticks, BAFTAs, Game Developers Choice, DICE, and, of course, the Game Awards. How do you feel about this victory?
I think it's a project that I know Larian Studios had put a lot of heart and soul into. It's one of those games that I having seen sort of the development of Larian Studios going from Divinity, Original Sins to now with Baldur's Gate 3. I feel it was a well-deserved victory, I suppose we could call it, of getting the 5 wins, Game of the Year awards. And I think they were overall it was overall well deserved. I think, or not to say that any other game didn't necessarily deserve this spot, but I think the passion behind the company that was involved in developing this game, I think it apologies for tingling up my words here, but
No, it's fine.
yeah. It's I think they did a pretty good. I think it's great to see that they got this honor of being the first to get the 5.
Yeah, it's absolutely no small feat whatsoever. It is definitely well deserved. How many hours would you think you put into Baldur's Gate 3?
Definitely well over 100 and maybe 2.
Yeah.
I have to see exactly.
Absolutely, yeah.
But yeah.
It's well loved by many. I've even tried it out myself. I haven't exactly gotten into it as much as most of my friends quite yet, but it's definitely on my backlog to dive into sometime this summer. And just to break down exactly how incredibly difficult it is to win all 5 major Game of the Year awards, we're going to jump back in time to the year 2017 when Breath of the Wild had the chance. It won 4 out of 5, but it got beat out by What Remains of Edith Finch. And then in 2018, God of War had the chance to win all 5, but it got beat out by, of course, Fortnite, of all things. And then even just 2 years ago in 2022, Elden Ring had the best chance to beat out the record, but was snuffed out by Vampire Survivors, of all games. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I will say that I think all the games that were listed could have very easily gotten the spot. I think that Breath of the Wild, while it's the only game in the list that I know I haven't played, I do, having seen the gameplay of it and being aware of being aware of how well developed Nintendo made Breath of the Wild, I really thought that they would be the first. I recall that with God of War as well, thinking that Fortnite sort of snuffed them out a little bit. And which God of War is another really well developed game. I can't say, I guess with God of War and Elden Ring, I didn't play them until after the fact, until after they got the rewards. So where Baldur's Gate, I pre-ordered it, so I got to experience. So I got to see it on the other end, having actually played the game before it started winning all these awards. Yeah, a different perspective, but on it. But even though I didn't play those games before they got the rewards, or hadn't played it at all yet with Breath of the Wild, I could see how they were really, really good contenders on getting the spot of being the first to get all 5.
Yeah, I played Breath of the Wild when it first released on the Nintendo Switch. Of course, that was a huge deal when the Nintendo Switch first released as well. It was a launch game, and it changed up the Zelda formula so much
Mm.
to make it more open-ended and the adventure type. It just completely threw out the original, like I guess the general Zelda formula that we've come to know and love, starting with A Link to the Past, where it kind of directed you into more of a streamlined experience rather than
Mm.
just like the original Legend of Zelda allowed you to explore on your own path.
Mm.
And it's a great callback to form on that, and a lot of people loved it that way,
Yeah.
except for one.
I
But
guess so.
which is fine. Which is fine. But I'm glad Larian Studios is definitely getting the credit they deserve. They are a fantastic studio making great games, and I would love to see what else they have in store.
Yeah, from what I understand, Larian Studios had been wanting Baldur's Gate 3 for a while, since back when they created Divinity Original Sin, the first one. I'm kind of vague on exactly what all the details were, but generally speaking, from what I recall, they wanted Baldur's Gate 3 around the time that Divinity 2 came out, but I'd have to look at who had Baldur's Gate 3, but whoever had Baldur's Gate 3 didn't give it to them yet because they're not AAA game or developers, they're indies. So they use, I know that Divinity 2, part of the background of what's going on with the Larian Studios was they were using Divinity 2 as sort of proof that they can deliver a really solid game with Baldur's Gate 3, and give Baldur's Gate 3 the credit and honor it deserves. So I think in turn, I think that's what I think made Baldur's Gate 3 so successful, is that there was a game plan behind it for years that they finally got to develop and share to the rest of us. So I'm glad that Larian Studios got to create Baldur's Gate 3, because honestly, I can't think of any others that would have given Baldur's Gate 3 the same justice that Larian Studios gave it.
Yeah. Do you think we'll see a Baldur's Gate 4 from Larian Studios?
I don't know, but I don't think so. But I don't know. It's possible. I could see, but I could see them maybe trying something else. I don't as much success as Baldur's Gate 3 has had. I feel like if they did a Baldur's Gate 4, there would be a sense of trying to make the sequel better than Baldur's Gate 3, and I don't know, Baldur's Gate 3 is so successful. It's if anything, I'm a little worried if they do make Baldur's Gate 4, because they might it might not live up to the expectations that everybody has.
Yeah.
Because now they've set a bar, and I think they should leave it at that in my perspective, and probably go to another game. But who knows? Maybe they're ambitious enough to try for a fourth.
Yeah, completely understandable. Now
Yeah.
that Baldur's Gate 3 is the first game to win all 5 Game of the Year awards, is this the closest video games can get to perfection?
I don't. Yeah, that's actually a pretty good question. I don't know. I don't know if there's ever going to be a game that would be like, that would ever be perfect. It's you have so many different gamers with so many different personalities, and you have a wide range of people, or of gamers, from those that casually play, from those that play video games on a day-to-day basis. So I would say it's already a difficult enough feat for a game to have 4 Game of the Year awards, let alone 5.
Yeah.
So and that we're talking 5, but there are a couple of other Game of the Year kind of groups out there as well. I know, for example, I'm aware Japan has one, but they chose Monster Hunter over Baldur's Gate 3, for example. So and understand, but I don't know how well like Dungeons and Dragons and a game, I guess, like Baldur's Gate 3, resonates, with other cultures and areas around the world that have their own sort of game of the years kind of rewards. So it's I suppose once it's perfect, if it ever got perfect, then it might be just too good of a game at that point. So
Yeah, that's true, and it'd be very hard to top for sure. Well, because it's
yeah,
based off of Dungeons and Dragons, D&D has been around since what, the 1980s. Yeah, do you
yeah.
think that plays a large part into its success?
Um, to a degree, I think so. Because yeah, sure, Dungeon Dragons has been around for a while, so a lot of people are familiar with the game, even if they hadn't. And within the last maybe 5 years or so, it really got popular, I think, with groups like Critical Role making video content to show their gameplays.
Oh yeah.
The things like that, I feel, really have helped streamline Dungeons and Dragons for sure. So it being a really popular system, I'm sure that has been a really big pull for people to want to play. But I do think that there is also the fact that it is sort of it is a role-playing adventure game. So even if you're not somebody that's familiar with Dungeons and Dragons at all, I think Baldur's Gate 3 did a good job of sort of bringing somebody in who hasn't played, the Dungeons and Dragons before, because anybody who has played the 5th edition version of Dungeons and Dragons would know that as great as Baldur's Gate is, it's actually limited on some of the things or some of the rules that are actually available to the average Dungeons and Dragons games, so or tables. So, but I think those limits, while it's limited, I guess to some degree, it also went really crazy with its creative stuff too. So I suppose with all that being said, it I think did an excellent job of like being creative but not being too creative, and being implementing the rules but not being too heavy on the rules to allow a good diversity of folks who haven't played the game before, learning all the mechanics, or people who have played the game before, being surprised with some of their takes, or some of their, I suppose, homebrewed rules into how they wanted to run their version of Dungeons and Dragons. So
Absolutely. So if somebody, I guess, was a newcomer and wanted to kind of get into what it's like playing D&D, would you say that this game is beginner friendly?
I think so, yeah. The thing that I think really makes Baldur's Gate 3 a really inclusive game is that there is a lot to do, and it does an excellent job of making you feel as if all of your actions really matter. There are very there are so many different types of interactions that you can do, from the obvious, I guess, going to a creature to attack it, or an enemy of some kind, or going about combat, or maybe going about an encounter in a more diplomatic manner, or even just exploring, even just random exploration in Baldur's Gate 3. It will sometimes lead you to other like side quests or random discoveries, and I think that the fact that it seems like all your actions are rewarded really helps. I think anybody that has different perspectives on how they like playing their games. I think it caters to a lot of people. So it's that being said, I think for a beginner, it is very. I think. I don't want to say easy necessarily, but it does a really good job of, I think, at least catering to a lot. Baldur's Gate 3, I mean, it's not necessarily an easy game, but it can be, I suppose. But that I suppose, that being said, Baldur's Gate does have ranges of difficulties too. So if you really are in there just for the story, it supports that too. So it's you don't have to be good at combat or strategy, or tactics to get through Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah. Uh, would you consider it necessary to play the first two Baldur's Gates in order to enjoy this one?
No, because I've not played the first two.
Yeah, the first two came out in,
Nah.
1990s, I want to say. Let me double check that.
Yeah, somewhere around there. I do know they make references. I did look into the story of Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 before playing 3, because I thought maybe it's possible that it might matter, but it doesn't. But there's a couple of nods, like the not necessarily. I don't want to say like too much to like spoil anything, but there's a character that joins you in Act 2 that potentially anyway, that is a character that's also that you also can that's also part of your party in Baldur's Gate. I think both 1 and 2. So
Okay.
there's little things like that. For example, that if you've played the other 2 games, kind of are nice little nods of, oh yeah, I remember this character, this place, or something like.
Yeah, it looks like the first one came out in 1998,
Nice.
and the sequel came out in 2000, and then they got enhanced editions in 2013.
Okay.
So I guess if you wanted to check out the entire series, it's all there on Steam.
I think I actually have the enhanced editions. I just
Yeah.
I think it was like a bundle or something.
Yeah.
Because I played Icewind Dale, and I think Baldur's Gate was a part of that bundle. I just never got around to it.
Right. Okay. Well, congratulations to Larian Studios, and I wish them the best of luck, and I wish them all the glory that they deserve and more.
Definitely. I look forward to seeing what they do next.
All right. All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump into our main topic of the night. We got a special Pokemon episode tonight, starting with going over how Pokemon has influenced our childhoods, our childhood memories of what we remember. Let's see. How long have you been a fan of Pokemon, Josh?
I have to say, I think since I was born.
Oh wow! Really?
I say that because I recall my dad playing Pokemon like when it was the original like Red and Blue.
Yeah.
I recall him playing it when I was like a toddler. So I think my dad is responsible for the reason why I'm a fan.
Yeah.
Since the very beginning.
I am actually quite surprised that my parents even allowed me to play Pokemon, because it was around that time that Pokemon made such an impact on our culture here in America, that a lot of parents were like, oh, if you like Pokemon, it's like worshiping the devil. My parents were, well, especially my mother, was like really a Christian in that sense, and but they actually looked into it. They saw that it was actually like, especially the games was like really math focused as far as numbers go, and they allowed me to play. So my first Pokemon game I ever got was Pokemon Yellow, I believe, when I was 8 or 9 years old. It's been so long since then, and I actually played that on a Game Boy Advance at the time. I never had an original Game Boy.
Oh, yeah, mine. It was original Game Boy. I don't remember if it was red or blue because I had both. I think my dad's was one, and I had the other. So, but I don't recall which one it was. And maybe I messed up his save file at one point and played on both. But
Oh gosh.
I could see that possibly happening to me being a little kid. But
well, since you had both, you was able to experience what it was like to trade with other people at the time.
Well, okay, to a degree, I suppose. I didn't really experience that too much until a little bit later, because I was still like a real young kid, I guess. And me, no, not that Pokemon wasn't in our vocabulary already when I was in like first or second grade, but I don't recall ever having brought a Game Boy to do that. I recall there being like trading cards. As far as the trading cards, yeah, I saw
Yeah.
that, but not quite the video game. And it, I'm not sure. I don't know if the real original ones did, because this is the Game Boy, not even Game Boy Color, but just Game Boy. So this is black and white,
Right.
style,
The
and
mucus green. Yep. Hmm.
yeah, the mucus green sort of stuff. So it's I honestly can't recall whether it supported or not, but if it did do, which I think it did, but I didn't touch that the trading side of things until like Ruby Sapphire once Generation 3 came around.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Do you remember when they started banning Pokemon cards from school?
Yeah, I brought that up with the card game, bring cards to school, because I recall it was just a small period of time. I want to say it was like maybe just a month's worth or something, because especially during recess, you would bring out your cards or whatever, and
Yeah.
we would be outside, but like I recall playing like on the one of the basketball, I guess, kind of like concrete sort of grounds, I guess, to
Yeah.
look at each other's cards and pretend like we're playing the game. And I say that because, like, even though it was for real in our heads, we didn't really read the rules or
Yeah,
really
we were
know
too
how to
young to
play.
understand the rules.
Yeah,
Yeah. But energies. What was energies?
yeah. The energies really made no sense
Yeah, that's
as a
not in the
kid.
video games.
Yeah.
Speaking of, I didn't really get into Pokemon until I was around the ripe old age of 10 when I got Ruby and Sapphire. So Generation 3 is probably one of my favorite generations of Pokemon, simply because it was the one I really got into, and I just played those games over and over and over, at least a couple dozen times.
Nice.
And I especially enjoyed the anime growing up. I did watch a lot of the anime, especially
Yeah.
the first season.
Yeah. I would say, yeah, the first couple of seasons, pretty much it was all of Kanto and then part of Johto. I'm kind of vague on where the seasons, I guess, lie in that realm, but
Yeah.
I do recall, yeah, my dad got was showing my age a little bit, or our age, but we had VHSs.
So did I.
But
I had like 5 VHSs for several different episodes. Yeah, go on.
yeah. Yeah, he got every single VHS
Oh, lucky.
yeah, one, yeah, version. So including I still have I have one where I know that they made like an edit on one of the episodes where Tentacruel like knocks down a building because of 9/11.
They actually made that?
They edited that.
I know that was like a banned episode.
Yeah, but I have a VHS of it.
That's
So,
awesome.
well,
I didn't.
I don't know what's the episode band. I thought it was just that they changed it, or they just took that out or something.
Yeah, it was banned specifically for that reason of 9/11. There was
Oh, just straight up banned. Okay, wow.
yeah. I think they did re-release it later, probably for VHS. I have to double check my history on that. But yeah, it was one of several banned episodes, at least in the beginning, for Pokemon.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So I have VHSs, I guess, of a lot of those, or I guess I say I have. I guess right now, I guess my dad kind of has them right now, but we have them, I guess. But they yeah, I've watched the anime for a while. I paused for a little bit. Pretty much, I guess I paused for during the Generation 3, really. I guess part of Generation 2 and all of Generation 3. But then I randomly got back into it for the Sinnoh region of Generation 4.
Yeah, that's when it hit hard, especially with the anime for me. And
Yeah.
you and I actually got together to compete, like on a major scale in the Pokemon League for a trading card game.
Yeah, did that for a little while. That was pretty fun. Yeah, I had a pretty good time with the trading card game. I will say it was a little different kind of environment. I will say it was my first time ever doing I would say like a tournament to that scale. we're talking, we're still in grade school. The closest to that, sort of feeling would be, I guess, if I participated in the spelling bee or something like that.
Yeah.
But to play a card game with a bunch of adults, that there's a competition involved, where there's prizes involved and things like that. There was definitely a lot of nerves, being in that kind of environment for the first time.
Oh,
So
speaking of, do you
yeah.
remember our first tournament together, where we went in with like cards from older sets, and they told us it's not like in rotation?
Yeah, I recall that. That
Yeah,
was a
that threw
very,
me for a loop.
yeah. I do recall that. So that was our first, I guess, experience was, of us just bringing cards, finding out that there is a thing called, I guess, like, bands and whatever.
Yep.
And
I had this
I think
awesome
they had,
Charizard EX deck that I wanted to rock at the time, but of course, that was when the Diamond and Pearl sets came out and it was already rotated out. Man, I was so disappointed that day.
I don't remember what I brought, but whatever I brought, it didn't matter, I guess, because they're illegal cards.
Oh yeah.
But I recall they had something, if I'm not mistaken, that they had like a side tournament thing or something that, either that or maybe we just played with a bunch of other people that had variant decks, because I feel like that seems familiar anyway.
Yeah, I think Expanded was a thing at the time. Maybe it wasn't necessarily
Okay.
called Expanded. Maybe it was just Unlimited. But
Mm.
yeah, I remember we got like some playtime into it.
Yeah. And then then we did those like the, I don't know, regionals and national things, I guess. When we get into like the bigger tournament stuff.
Yeah,
I say national. I never joined a national one, but
I remember getting really into the Pokemon TCG, anywhere from like, let's say during my high school years, like from '07 to 2011, and I believe 2012 was right about that was the time I went to the regionals in Indianapolis, and I think that was my last major tournament that I participated in.
yeah, that's I recall I recall that, like, I went to like a regionals that was held in Houston, and that wasn't quite my last, but it was, I guess, the last. I did feel like that would be kind of the last. I was sort of fading away, I guess. It almost seemed like as I was starting to get into it, I started, I guess, noticing things sort of like, how the meta was looking like and such. And
Yeah, tell us why you
I will
dropped out.
say, that was the biggest issue I had was
The Mewtwo
when I
Wars,
played
right?
anyway. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was something just before that already annoyed me about how everybody just played the same deck. That's how I felt when I was in regionals in Houston. And at the time, and I think it's either 2010 or 2011, because I remember I was still in high school, I guess, for that. But I think, yeah, actually maybe maybe it's 2010. Yeah. But anyway, whenever it was, I recalled having that feeling. I'll admit I don't remember what the deck was now, but everybody at Battle played generally the same deck. I shouldn't say everybody, but it was close to that. But then it became even more so, with the Mewtwo the very next year.
Yeah.
And that, like, I remember we did a state thing. I want to say you and I went, but maybe it was just me. But either way, that was my last. Was the year after, because then it became something I was already kind of feeling about. Became much more noticeable with the Mewtwo stuff, because then everybody ran Mewtwo, and it was like, I remember I ran in some sort of Umbreon deck, for the sake of trying to counter that.
Right.
But it didn't matter because it was just so powerful. It just what I was trying to do something different. And that's where I will say that there was a lesson learned there, I guess, in that while it can be for some people, it just wasn't for me. And I found that tournaments just yeah, just weren't there for me, because I love playing just for fun, and I prefer I don't know if the same terminology goes with Pokemon, but with Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh, I like to do rogue decks, or decks that are still functionally sound and work fine, but 9 times out of 10 they're probably not going to do well in a tournament, but that's okay, because that's not
That's not the point.
that's not why
Yeah.
that's not important. I'm here to I play the games to have fun, and so that's when I decided to sort of I guess tournaments just weren't my thing, but I enjoyed having that experience.
Yeah. Yeah, during that time when Mewtwo EX was a popular card, like fresh out off the print, you either had to have a deck that was built around Mewtwo EX or one that countered Mewtwo EX, and there was like no other diversity from that, and it just left a sour taste in my mouth. What really drove me out of the competitive the tournament runs was I was playing for fun against somebody off to the side in between rounds, and he was like bringing out one of his weaker decks, I guess, and he kind of made a point about the one that I brought that I thought was competitively viable. He's like, oh yeah, that's one I like to play around with for fun. I'm like, man, I guess it really stung, because it's something that I really worked hard and put a lot of heart and soul into building. And he just kind of trashed it, and of course he like wiped the floor with me, and I wasn't doing so well that tournament, and I just thought, man, is this really something I want to spend a lot of time doing? Like, it was at that time that I realized that maybe I can just like diversify and just like explore other venues as far as entertainment goes, and I just dropped out of the competitive scene after that.
And it's sometimes with tournaments, especially in person, I say, because I mean that's all that was available at the time. Now I don't know about Pokemon trading card games specifically, but I know generally speaking, trading card games have online ways of interacting with folks, and I think that's been pretty nice, like sort of feature to have, to utilize tournament like things, because I know one thing that stands out to me too, this is me teen into young adult, I guess, thing that I've always had like an issue with is there's no honor whatsoever in tournaments. If you make like a small something could be so obvious. I'll use since we're talking Pokemon. I'll lean with Pokemon, but really I have an example for every game I've played that I've done a little tournament thing here or there with. But because I'll admit, even after I guess I've dabbled a little bit in the other little tournaments, but and found the same result at the end of the day. I just like playing just for fun. But Pokemon, there was one with Pokemon. I don't remember exactly what deck I was running. I don't remember exactly what deck my opponent was running. But I remember there was I had like a Machoke out, and they were able to deal, extra damage to my opponent's Dark type Pokemon. I don't even remember what the Dark type Pokemon was now, but I remember like I was supposed to do double damage, and I noted the damage. I thought the person would put double damage, and so I didn't think anything of it until it was like my turn again. And then when it was my turn again, I realized like I should already be in a position where I should KO the Pokemon. I don't know, and it took me a second to realize that the person didn't put double the damage on their thing, and so I pointed it out, and they're like they're like, oh well, you should have noted that before the turn passed to me or whatever. And I remember I called a judge on that, and the judge took the person's side, because it was like that's something, I guess it was my fault for trying to pay attention to that sort of thing instead. And it's like, man, like It's like especially at that time when I was still that was like my second or third tournament that I ever participated in, and so I was still pretty honestly in every tournament I have a little bit of nerves, but especially in the beginning. I feel I was definitely like really shaking, I guess, but I feel like
Yeah, I get
I feel
that.
like that was so unfair. Like, you know, that was like 15 or 16-year-old me, and you know, this was an adult. It was like, oh my gosh, so that annoyed me.
No, I definitely get what you're feeling. In a professional tournament setting, a lot of things do tend to slip away because it stops
Yeah,
being fun, and
yeah.
it's more, yeah, the nerves get to you, and it starts becoming
Mhm.
extremely competitive, and you got to be on top of your game at all times. And
Yeah, and it's like, man, I'm already having this hard time thinking in my head, okay, this is what I'm going to do next. This is my next move or whatever. Now I have to pay attention to what my opponent's doing
yeah,
too, and
yeah,
so making sure like they're doing what they're supposed to do. It's like, ah,
right, yeah.
yeah.
Um, well, on the fun note of that, I remember building, let's see, in the Diamond and Pearl era, a rock and mag mortar deck. I don't know if you remember, but I love that deck to death. Building that
Yeah, I
out.
vaguely recall that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was wrong. And then shortly after that, I think I built like a Salamence level X deck, and that was my go-to for a while.
Mm.
Yeah, so such good memories, especially going to league every week and just trying it out, doing different strategies, seeing what works and doesn't work. And honestly,
Mhm.
now that we live in the future, um, there's an app called Pokemon Trading Card Game Live that I play on a regular basis, and it's just really bringing back, I guess, what I remember the game used to be, being able to
Mm.
do that. And since it's all digital, everything, well, for the most part, for what I've been getting is essentially free. So I'm not really spending money on card packs or anything like that, having it take up space in my house. But
Mm.
it's really nice. To go in and spend a little time in developing these meta decks without, having to be oh so serious about it.
Yeah. No, I think that's pretty cool. I'll have to check the website out,
Yeah,
but
for sure.
after this. But yeah, with that or any other trading card game, like that's what I've always find more enjoyable is what I get enjoy in is actually just um, trying to finding a card or two, whether it's like one card that has a really unique feature about it or something that I want to play around with, or maybe I see there's like two or three cards that make a nice combo, and trying to figure out how do I um, maximize this cool combo to the best that I can with what cards I can put into the deck. So
Yeah.
I find crafting the deck actually more enjoyable than actually play. I mean, I enjoy playing it too, but the playing part of it is seeing it all play out, and then when you get the cool thing off, whatever that
Yes.
cool thing is,
Yeah, that one strategy
that's
you
what I
built
go for.
upon. Yes, absolutely, and that's what makes trading card games so much fun. Deck builders
Mm,
in general so
yeah,
much fun
yeah.
is all the different combinations that you can pull off with these different deck builds, which loses its luster when you go into a competitive setting and a lot of people
Mm,
running the same deck list, and it loses its fun after that.
yeah.
But what? Let's change gears over to video games. Which
Sure.
series, which sets of video games did you actually spend a lot of time playing?
A lot of time playing. Well, I think I've played them all about the same. Maybe a little bit more of the earlier editions or generations than maybe the newer ones, but um, I would say that I think I've got the most play out of I would say of Diamond and Pearl or Platinum. I guess I should say Platinum more, but either Platinum or Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon. I got a lot of gameplay out of that too. I guess those two were the ones that stood out to me the most as far as how much I've played.
Okay. Are there
Um,
any of the main series games that you haven't played yet?
the only one I've not played is Sword and Shield.
Sword and Shield.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I've
Uh,
not played Generation 8.
Yeah, it's pretty divisive as it is. But do you like intend to play it at any point?
Probably. The reason why I hadn't played that would be actually the same reason I hadn't really got to play Breath of the Wild. I didn't get a Switch for a while. It
Okay,
wasn't until after COVID that at some point I got a Switch.
makes sense.
And
Yeah.
so I will say that that was a big factor of why I missed like some Nintendo games. And yeah, Sword and Shield was one of those. It wasn't necessarily that I didn't want to play it. I just didn't have the system. But I suppose that might deviate into another topic outside of Pokemon.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
that was the
completely
reason.
understandable.
Yeah,
Oh gosh.
but I
Uh,
plan on playing it at some point.
yeah.
The Gigamaxing thing seems like a cool feature. I like test.
Yeah, I think I started to slightly, and I say slightly in the littlest of senses. I guess kind of stopped being a fan of Pokemon ever since Generation 6 came out. Because I always bought the video games basically day one as they came out, spending on both copies. And it was Gen 6 I decided I would just stick to just one copy rather than both. One to save money, and two because of the reception that it has been getting lately.
Yeah. Um, the reception I can understand. There's a I totally understand the where there is an issue with the system kind of being the same every time. You get new Pokemon, but then the gameplay's about the same. I am seeing that at least Nintendo's been trying recently of trying to do a couple of little different things to try to, I don't know, figure that out. I guess what it appeases to people. So I'll give them credit in trying. But yeah, and I guess I would say I fell for that for a little while myself too. So Platinum was I thought for looking back on things, I think Platinum could have been the last game I ever played Pokemon, and that would have probably been it. So yeah, that one was that one was a really good game. Actually, I wasn't necessarily fading out because of that. I recall the reason why. I thought that would be it. Was that Platinum, in my perspective, has the best story. I've both liked like the anime, even though I can't really speak much on the anime because I've not watched them all or anything. So I would say it's a bit biased on only having watched Kanto, part of Johto, and Diamond and Pearl's version, Sinnoh. So but yeah, I really enjoyed the anime. And I really thought that they did an excellent job with the mystery dungeons of Explorer Skies.
Yeah.
That had an excellent story, and then Platinum, itself also had like an amazing story too. I think I remember one of the grabbing points. I mean, maybe it's cliche now, but I mean, yes. So I guess part of it could have been just the fact that I was a teenager, I guess, around Platinum, and may not have been as in the know. I haven't read so many stories yet or anything like that, but with Platinum having Cyrus actually kind of win for a little bit, instead of Diamond and Pearl, where you stop him immediately at the Spire. I thought that was actually kind of cool, even though he ends up failing afterwards trying to get Garantina and all. But I thought him winning for a little bit was really cool, because Team Galactic, or Team Rocket or Team whatever, well, generally speaking, usually you expect them to lose, and I mean they still lost, of course. But
right.
to see the bad guy win a little bit, something about that just really like drew me. It's like, wow, that was really cool. I don't know.
I would have to say that Cyrus is probably the most interesting team boss in Pokemon. Him and Ghetsis both. They got quite a bit of backstory to them, and Giovanni, of course. But I would say Team Rocket is probably one of the best team bad guys that has ever been introduced in Pokemon.
Definitely, I will say Giovanni is definitely the top.
Yeah.
Can't argue with that.
Because he's secretly a gym leader as well, and that was like the coolest thing to learn for the first time, playing through at least my copy of Pokemon Yellow.
Yeah, I thought that was a nice surprise as well. I think I think maybe that's why the first one kind of stands out for me as well. Now, yeah, against this, I actually Black and White has been kind of my more recent one. I guess now with Scarlet and Violet, I guess that's my more recent. But I skipped Black and White,
A lot
and
of people did.
you know, it didn't. I don't know what about it. I know one thing that didn't appeal to me was some of the Pokemon that they revealed that there was going to be, in Black and White.
Mm-hmm.
Because I recall there was specifically I mean, as much as I would call myself a Pokemon fan, I'm not like the biggest, I guess, because I can't remember the ice cream looking one's name. But
We have vanilla,
yeah,
vanillite, vanillish, and
Vanillite.
vanillite.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, well, that evolution, yeah, that was one of those, for there were a couple of others, but that was one, for example, that stuck in me. It's like, okay, Pokemon, they ran out of ideas now,
Yeah, yeah.
and
Pit a battle between Vanillux and Alakazam and see who comes out on top.
yeah, and and it's such a shame too, because now that I have played Black and White, it's actually it's another really really good game that I feel has a great story too that I just completely missed out on. Yeah, it played with a feature that I didn't get to see that I wish they did more of. Which was like the triple battle stuff.
Yeah,
Sometimes
yeah.
I mean, they already, for whatever reason, shy away a bit from double battle stuff. I don't know why, because I think double battles are really cool.
They're
but,
amazing.
Then they introduced triple battles. Like, oh, that's really cool. But then it was so rare in Black and White. It was like just enough to introduce it, but then that was about it. And I know X and Y has it, but it's
Right.
only in one feature, or one section, I guess, that you get to play with triple battles. And that's it. It's like what they could have done so much. I feel like I don't know. Maybe that could have been maybe like a game changer of breaking the norm of just always having single battles to maybe having double or triple battles. I don't know.
I would have loved to see rotation and triple battles make it a reappearance to this day. Triple battles,
Yeah.
especially triple battles, was such a unique feature to implement, especially if you could get it to where you and two other friends go up against three other players. In that sense, that would have been awesome. But yeah, they limited triple battles to just, I believe, Charles in Driftveil City and Gen 5 games. Because he was like the one who introduces it, and then there's like the Battle Mason, if I remember correctly, in Gen 6 for both X, Y, and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire that lets you do kind of like the Battle Tower style battles for that. And then of course Double Battles was incredible, and it's still a staple today, especially in competitive Pokemon games. And the way they did it in Pokemon Coliseum and Pokemon XD was very genius, in my opinion. And they should definitely.
I am glad.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was to say that I am glad that that it does see a bit more of a light, or double battles see more of a light in competitive play. I've barely watched any of it, but the little bit I'm aware, I'm glad that at least double battles is something, because I think, but I do wish, I guess, that single player versions, I guess, of the game would diversify a little bit more.
If only there's like a setting or something at the beginning of the game that could tailor whether you want single or double battles to be played throughout the game. I think that would make a great addition.
There's a couple of ROM hacks that do that.
Yeah, tell me about the ROM hacks you've been playing lately.
Yeah. Well, I guess the one I was thinking of, or referring to more so, was Pokemon Fusion. That plays around with the idea of fusing two Pokemon together to create just about anything you can think of. It really changes a whole lot of, like, what abilities they get, and what moves that they learn and such. And it's a really cool feature that it has a really active community of people drawing various sprites for
Oh
I don't
yeah.
know how many there are that exist now when you combine two. Not only combine two, but like they have like two different versions for every type.
Oh wow.
And it's sort of like I guess you could sort of say like um, heads of one, tails of another, or flip them and get the other, the reverse sort of thing. Or maybe a little bit more, I guess, to the game. You get like the ability of one, but you get the type of the other, or the first type of the other if they're like dual typed or something. And so there's but one of the features it has anyway is to allow double or triple battles when it's prompted or able. So I think that's kind of cool. I've played a game called Pokemon Infinity that's played a little bit with their versions, I guess, of Pokemon. They came, I guess. I know there's a technical term for it that's slipping my mind, but they're Fakemons.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
play around a little bit with their sort of made up Pokemon. And oh yeah, so Pokemon Fusion. That's really good. Yeah.
I,
But
dou- I doubled around with Pokemon Uranium a couple years back. That was a pretty good fan made game that I played around with. Is basically an original take of Pokemon. They added a new element called it's like radioactive, like nuclear Pokemon. Essentially, they made a new evolution
okay.
for it and everything as well, and it's definitely a unique take that revolved around a nuclear explosion, and you're like the child of the scientist who was working on that, and
Hmm.
it's something I really like to go back and play.
Yeah.
Because they had like
I think I know what you're
original,
talking about.
yeah, they had original Fakemon for that game as well.
Cool. Yeah. Then one other I play that I pick it up off and on is Vintage White. It's you can play it as is, but it was built with the mindset of nuzlocking. So it's a very very difficult game, I guess you could say.
Oh,
That's
okay.
even more difficult when you're trying to nuzlocke, but uh, so it's one that I am trying to nuz. I did stream it for a while on Twitch, but I wasn't being consistent at some point. There came a point where generally stuff was going on in real life situations that sort of got me from not streaming, I guess, it anymore as of late. But I still play it, still trying to nuzlocke it. But I do like how they sort of refine some things, some of the Pokemon to make them a little more, I guess I would say better in my perspective. It's almost
Yeah.
like an errata of like of changing some of the Pokemons to make them a little bit more better and either whether it's like adding a type or changing a type or maybe giving them a couple of moves. I guess for example, one of the very first that you will note right away, or very early anyway, would be the Pidgey line to Pidgeot. They've made Pidgey to Pidgeot an normal electric type.
Oh,
So
that's awesome.
or sorry, flying electric type. Huh?
Yeah, flying electric.
So
Okay.
flying electric. So that line has some electric moves.
Nice.
So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's actually some of my favorite ROM hacks that I've been playing recently is ones that allow you to capture every Pokemon without the need of at the very least trading them. Some games
Yep.
actually fix the bugs and glitches of the originals. For instance, like Red and Blue, there was a lot of issues with the coding in that game. Some recent ROM hacks are there to fix that, and randomization type ROM hacks are among my favorites. I don't think I can go back and just play a vanilla version of Pokemon anymore, knowing that
Uh,
these different ROM hacks exist.
since I've been introduced to ROM hacks, I feel the same way. Now, I guess like. I guess, yeah, I would say I got into ROM hacks pretty much at, the peak of COVID, I guess. And, I didn't play, I suppose while Sword and Shield was around, I was playing ROM hacks. So I will say it was a different feel when Scarlet and Violet came out. I've only played Scarlet. I haven't played Violet, I guess, but playing Scarlet, it did have a different feel because it almost felt like things got, I don't know. I don't want to say like less fun, but it was just a little bit too slightly too easy, and then things got sort of, I don't know, nerfed now because they weren't optimized like some of the ROM hacks, have made some of the Pokemon. So
Yeah.
it was still fun. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed playing Scarlet, but yeah, there was sort of this feel, or it
Well, that
definitely felt
makes
like just a casual play.
yeah, that makes one of us. My playthrough from Scarlet was, I wouldn't say excruciating because that's a little extreme, but it's pretty up there. But yeah, I know what you
Got it.
feel. Going back and playing some of these more balanced ROM hacks makes the game a lot more fun.
Yeah.
And a standout for me is probably Rising Ruby and Sinking Sapphire. It's of course a ROM hack about Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire that completely balance it to where all Pokemon are available. All gym leaders have six Pokemon on their team, and they all have held items. So yeah, it does beef up the difficulty of it, but it does make it a lot more fun to go through.
Yeah, well, that sounds like Vintage White. So if you want to try Vintage White, you can. The only limitation that it gave, I don't know why they did it, but well, okay, I have a theory of why, because it's the same person that made Emerald Kaizo. I don't know if you've heard of Emerald Kaizo, but
I've heard of Kaizo.
but that is yeah. But that was notoriously, I guess, like some there's some background, I guess, stuff with nuzlocking that generally somebody was able to nuzlock that game for the first, when it seemed like an impossible game to nuzlock, and that I think is what kind of from, at least from my perspective, that's what got me into nuzlocking, was seeing somebody do what was perceived impossible possible, or made it possible.
Yeah.
And well, the same person that made that version, I guess, of the game, created Vintage White. So I guess I'm giving a disclaimer before explaining what the one thing change they made, which was that it's Generation 3 and earlier. They took out Generation 4 and 5. Unless it's an evolution, then those are still included. But that's probably my only take of why did they take out the other two generations? But outside of that, it's really not that bad, because playing the game, I hardly think about that. It was just only when I got the ROM hack that that was on my mind. But they did such a great job of making it such. I'm saying they. I don't know if it's a team or one person, but whoever made it anyway. They I felt did a really good job of making all the battles difficult. And as you mentioned, all the gym leaders having 6 Pokemon, things like that.
Yeah.
The only exception is the first gym leader. The first gym leader has 3, but no matter which of the 3 that you're battling in Vintage White, because the leader does change, but based on your starter. But yeah, everybody has held items. But one thing that they took out was that you can't use items, but the opponent can't use items either. So you're only stuck with held items. So yeah.
Yeah, if I were to make I guess a Pokemon ROM hack for myself, changes I would implement is definitely basically street rules for trainer battles. But if you go into gyms, then it's like Pokemon Stadium rules, competitive rules, like 3-on-3 with held items, and of course you got to limit yourself on what you can put and what kind of
If you want to
Pokemon
heal, you gotta equip the citrus berry or teach somebody recover.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of which, I think I really enjoy playing a lot of Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2 back in the day as well. That was my jam. I don't think a lot of other people understand my love for Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2. Well, 1 is the announcer. He really definitely makes the game.
Definitely.
But
he has some very quotable things to say.
Yeah, but it's all about that transfer pack that came with the games, where you're able to transfer your Pokemon from those original games over into Pokemon Stadium, which in a way almost makes it like its own battle frontier for the games. Not only that, but it's also its own Pokemon box. You could transfer all of your Pokemon from the original games into the N64 cartridge that way, and have them ready for battle for all the different cups that you can go through. They even got their own let's see, gym leader castle they can go through, so you can play through competitive viable versions of gym leader battles. So it's almost like you're going back and like doing a Pokemon World Tournament style battles against the gym leaders, and it's all around a fun time. And there's 2 different rounds that you can do as well. So once you beat like all the Prime Cup of the first round, it unlocks the second round, which are much more difficult battles, and you definitely get your time's worth out of it.
Yeah, yeah, I found I'm aware of the pack feature where you're able to transfer Pokemon into the game. I think that was really cool. I want to say I played with that feature, but I don't know. But whether I had or hadn't, like I thought that was brilliant to do that. That yeah, at least at that age and time, definitely was sort of like a it almost seemed like an impossible feat that was made possible, like something I never conceived of, actually seeing your 2D like pixelated Pokemon into a 3D model.
And that was the greatest feature of the game at the time.
Yeah,
just being able to see them in real life 3D.
yeah, that was really cool. I mean, I was kind of surprised it took them a while to get to 3D. I will say that is what pulled me back. I mentioned how like I thought Generation 4 would be the last Sinnoh. But the only reason I touched X and Y was that it was 3D. So I was like,
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. So we'll well, I will say that in Mega Evolutions took me a second. But those seemed pretty cool. The only critique I had with that is that I wish Mega Evolutions was for everybody instead of just for fan favorites. But
Agreed.
that's like, and I don't understand why Mewtwo and Charizard got 2, but
because they're the popular ones.
Yeah,
They're fan favorites.
I mean, I like both of the Pokemon. Yeah. It's not that I don't like either one of them. Like Mewtwo's, I will say as far as legendaries, Mewtwo's still my favorite. And Charizard's pretty high up there. But I don't feel like they were worthy enough to get 2 Mega Evolutions, while tons of Pokemon didn't even get a single evolution. Mega Evolution.
Yeah. No.
What's up with that?
I'm right there with you. I feel like. Something I've been diving into is the world of Pokemon RPG, basically D&D for Pokemon, and some of the things I've been dabbling with is like Mega Evolutions for everybody, and what that would look like, and
Cool.
a friend of mine has been making like fan art of what that would look like.
Cool.
Yeah. Really great stuff.
I
was honestly adverse to Mega Evolutions at first when it was brand new. A lot of people were. It was kind of like a new gimmick at the time that they were implementing into Pokemon, and it was kind of like changing the way how Pokemon battles were dealt with. But after a while, I came around to really enjoy that, and I was really disappointed when it got sidelined for Z moves in Generation 7.
Yeah, I wish that they would have kept with the theme, where they could have given because I feel like Mega Evolutions had enough of popularity. Maybe it wasn't the most popular thing, but it was popular. I think it was received well enough to where I think they could have continued with it. And if they, part of my theory of why like maybe not all of them got a Mega Evolution is that I feel like maybe they were a little too ambitious, because it was also the first game that got 3D models. So maybe if they still stuck with 2D for maybe one more generation or something, maybe everyone would have gotten a Mega Evolution. And I sort of felt like maybe it was just time constraints and being too ambitious was the reason behind why not everyone got a Mega Evolution. But I wish that they would have like continued that, with Generation 7, and maybe finish it with Generation 8 or something like that. I don't know, but yeah, going to Z crystals for Generation 7, never touched those. Nobody does, I don't think. And
they're a gimmick at best.
Yeah. I feel like I haven't played Sword and Shield, but I kind of feel like the Gigamaxing thing was sort of just covering up the Mega Evolution. It's like, yeah, they could have just, I don't know, instead of this whole Gigamax thing, they could have just gave everybody else, the remaining Pokemon, their Mega Evolutions.
Yeah.
But I don't
So
know.
Game Freak's excuse for like creating these different gimmicks for each of these generations, because they don't want them to feel like they don't want one generation of games to overtake another. They want you to have a reason to go back and replay some of the older generations. But yeah, when they came out with Dynamax and Gigantamax in Gen 8, that's when it basically crossed the line for me. Is like, okay, this is starting to get really ridiculous. You got these special arenas where these Pokemon just blow up to ginormous size, and then
Yeah.
the realism, the realistic guy in me is thinking like, what about these the crowd in the arenas? Of course the anime already took care of answering that. They have like these magic barriers for all these different Pokemon attacks to protect them, but even still, I think it's like going a bit too far.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I can only speak on just what I'm aware of with Sword and Shield. I haven't played the game, but yeah, I do feel like just growing them larger was sort of a cheap move. It seemed like it was just there wasn't at least Z crystals, even though it's just, yeah, a gimmick at best. At least they all had special animations, and then they dabbled even, more specific special animations with, like, I know Snorlax had a specific one, and
Yeah.
Pikachu had a specific one, for example. A couple of them had their special ones or whatever. But it's like, at least they put effort into giving them all animations and stuff and making them a little bit more, I don't know, like, it's clear they put effort. But the Gigamax scene, it just seems like all they did was just, all they had to do was just upscale, the model to, times 1,000. That was it.
Yeah,
Done.
and Gigantamax I don't think could be used in every battle like they could with Z moves and Mega Evolutions. It's only in very
Okay.
particular locations, because
Huh.
there's special domains scattered throughout the Galar region, and there's one in every um, gym as well, and that's when you could use it. Although the gym leader theme for when a Gigantamax happens is actually really cool. When the crowd gets involved, that's fun to listen
Okay.
to. But yeah, in Gen 7 with the Z crystals, I didn't like the dances that they implemented in that. I thought that was really dumb.
Yeah. I thought that's yeah.
And then Gen 9, they introduced terraforming Pokemon, which is cool in the sense that they can change types. I like that.
Yeah.
But make them shiny with putting a hat on them, again, that's where it loses me.
Yeah, I guess they could have lost the hat. I can agree with that. They could have still been, maybe, I don't know, sparkly looking, but
It
you
just
didn't
looks
need to give them a
stupid.
hat.
Yeah. It just looks so dumb. Like what is it supposed to represent? Does it even have mass? Does it add weight to the
Yeah.
Pokemon? It's just stuff I think about.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get it.
But yeah, Mega Evolutions is probably one of the few gimmicks I was really into Pokemon.
Yeah.
That and held items. I was extremely open to held items when that was implemented
Yeah.
back in
Yeah.
Gen 2. And then they reformed them and made held items proper in Gen 3.
Yeah. Yeah. I think yeah, having some of the ROM hacks I've played where they limited, or, well, even as having Nuzlocke myself, even in games that allow items, I mean, just not only limiting yourself to just held items, I think is the way to go anyway. Using items just feels like a cheat way of, like, you could have lost, but good thing you got your max revives and hyper potions
And full
and
restores, and yeah,
restore-
that's what I'm saying. Like
the gym leader never gets to use.
that is something that
Or
should
rarely, I
not
should.
be implemented in like league battles at the very least.
No.
Including gym leaders and Elite Four and whatnot. Trainers should not be allowed to just spam items onto their Pokemon for
No,
those
yeah.
instances. But it is what it is. If I were to make my own ROM hack, those are the changes I would implement.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you would like to add to this topic?
Has your I'm sure you have like favorite Pokemon like I have. Has
Yeah,
the favorite Pokemon changed over time
absolutely.
as you've grown up?
Um, I mean, you know my gamer tag. I'm really into dragons. I love dragons.
Yeah.
Every time they come out with new dragons, it becomes like among one of my favorite Pokemon.
Hmm.
I would have to say Dragonite will always be my top favorite. Yeah, he'll always
Nice.
be my boy. You know.
Cool.
What about you?
Um, yeah. As far as like a favorite, I think it changes. So I know for quite a while it was Vulpix as a kid, and I would say the majority of my lifetime, I guess, here as getting involved with Pokemon, I would say Vulpix was one, but excuse me, but over time it had sort of changed.
Let me guess. Alolan Vulpix.
That was
Yeah.
really cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
Alolan Vulpix. Yeah, that definitely changed. My favorite from the original to Alolan. I liked, I do like that they had regional things. That was something.
That was a cool
Just going
implementation.
back up a little bit, yeah. Having regional versions of Pokemon, I think, was an excellent move, and I'm glad that has continued to be a theme in most games, anyway.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. So, do you still consider Vulpix to be your top favorite?
Not anymore. I would say it's still like around the top 10-ish, I would say.
Okay.
But no, I've been a pretty big fan of Quilava.
That's a good one.
And yeah. It deviated a little bit, but then once Arceus came out, I really loved the Typhlosion line, the fire ghost type. I really like that.
Yes.
So it ended up
Okay.
being,
Yep.
yeah. So that's my favorite. The shoot, is it called Galarian, or is it something else?
Are you talking about Hisuian?
Hisuian, that's what it is. I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, Galarian didn't sound right. Yeah, Hisuian. But yeah, so I do like Quilava a little bit more than Typhlosion, but that whole line, like, I think this is really cool.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Cyndaquil is like the bee's knees of cuteness.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Do any of the newer Pokemon besides Hisui and Typhlosion strike your fancy?
The newer like variants, or just kind of newer Pokemon in
Just
general.
newer Pokemon in generation
Yeah.
from, I guess, Gen 8 on.
Well, it's hard to say with eight since I've yet to play it. But Gen 9. Um, since I have to think about it, I guess not. Nothing's really like coming out. Well, I mean, I guess as I'm thinking about it. Um, there was I do like the um. Oh man, I'm trying to think of the name of the Pokemon, but I can't think of it right now. Um, I feel like I used to be good about the Pokemon names in the past, but as they
Yeah,
move,
kind
we're
of
getting
dropped
more.
off from under, like, being able to name them all. There's too many to name.
There's so many now. Yeah,
It's
it's
like
trying to
over a
keep up with.
thousand. Holy crap.
Yeah, so many now. But I do like the uh, it's Thievul. I do like
Uh,
Thievul.
yeah, the one that looks like it has a vacuum cleaner for a tail.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Thievul's good one. Is it because it's also a fox?
Yeah, there's a I suppose I do lean towards foxes a little bit.
Man, foxes are awesome. I
Um,
don't care what anybody
yeah,
says.
I mean, yeah, I've always liked Vulpix. Vulpix has always been the top, and yeah, when X and Y came out, I've Delphox, Blaziken, Fennekin, like I played. That was my starter.
Oh yeah,
Oh.
absolutely. let's see. As far as Gen 8 on goes, I think I never really liked very many of the designs that the Galar region introduced. Some standout ones, of
Yeah.
course, were Corviknight and Boltund. I really like those designs, but everything else was just kind of garbage mons to me. But that's just my personal opinion. I understand I can get a lot of flack for that. But Gen 9, some standouts for me would be Saraluge, the evolution of Charcadet. I think that looks really awesome.
Yeah. Oh, there's one that does come out today, so I'm looking at them now. It's a Generation 8 one, but I thought it was Generation 9 for a little while because again I skipped 8, but Dragapult.
Dragapult, absolutely,
yeah, that's
yes.
a cool design.
It is a really cool design.
I did like that.
It's a little strange that it shoots out its pre-evolution forms as torpedoes.
Yeah.
But I guess that's an interesting design, yeah. Duraludon is another one that kind of stands out for me. It's like a towering, especially its Gigantamax form, oddly enough. It's like a towering skyscraper of just a steel dragon type.
Oh, yeah. That's pretty...
Let's see, in Gen 9 specifically, I'm looking over the list here. Okay, what threw me under the bus was the Palmy line. Do you know what I'm talking about? The Pikachu lookalike of that generation?
Yeah, and they've tried that. They've tried that in the past, and it's not worked. I feel.
Because every generation has to have its Pikachu clone. You know,
for some reason.
Every single generation. This one, it's Palmy, Palmo, and Palmot. What I don't understand is why Palmo and Palmot look basically exactly the same. Like, there's barely any design change for that.
The only change, I think, if I recall, it goes from being quad pedal to bipedal.
No, that's from Palmy to Palmo. I'm talking about from Palmo to Palmot. I thought Palmo was the final evolution of that line for the longest time until I realized, oh, the champion has a Palmot. I'm like, what is this? It looks like a variation of Palmo, but no, it's its evolution.
Yeah, you're right. Because I think the only thing that changed, I guess, the only change I guess really was just, I don't know, the ruffs, I guess, on the neck or something. The tufts are.
Yeah, the tufts of hair and the fact that it's a little
maybe it's
darker orange.
Longer. Yeah, it's darker orange, yeah.
Golly.
Yeah, there was something like that. I feel Pokemon's been guilty of for a few years now, for a few generations anyway.
Let me throw this out there. Callbacks to original Pokemon of our generation. They brought in Wiglet and Toadscool as not exactly regional variants, but new Pokemon altogether. How do you feel about that? Did you see them?
Both.
Do you know that they exist?
I have to look them up. Give me a sec. I don't know what you're talking about.
So you know Diglett, right?
Yes.
Diglett's part of the original 150. It's been around since forever. It's a ground type. Now they have Wiglet in Gen 9, which is a water type.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Now, yes, you're right.
And not only that, they also brought in a Wugtrio, which is the evolution. It's basically, a water type Dugtrio, but it's in a coral rock or something. And then they got Toadscool, which was originally a water poison type, which is now a ground grass type. And instead of swimming in the water, it runs around on land, and its walking animation is hilarious if you ever see it in action.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like Diglett should have always just been the mysterious what's going on in the the bottom half of it.
I mean, it still can be, but now we got Wiglet, which has a much longer neck.
Yeah. Well, okay, yeah, I guess it. Yeah, okay, it hasn't fully, I guess, shown its body, but it does make it. I guess what I meant to lean on was that it almost makes it seem like it's a worm now instead of whether it could have been. I don't know. Like, I don't see funny theories or whatever of them being like super buff underneath.
I've seen that, yeah,
or whatever.
So Wiglet is actually.
I guess they still could be, but now it would just be somebody with a super long neck.
Yeah. So instead of a mole, Wiglet is a garden eel, according to its Pokedex entry.
Okay.
Yeah. And let's see what Toadskool is. Toadskool is a wood deer Pokemon, whatever that means. But it's basically a walking plant. But if you ever go back and playing Scarlet and you see it in the wild, the way it runs is just it's stuff of legends. Let's just put it that way.
Got it. I'll have to look for it.
Oh, an interesting battle mechanic that was introduced in this generation was Tatsugiri and Dondozo. Have you heard of this? Have you seen it?
I guess not.
So it can only be implemented in double battles, which is interesting on its own. But essentially, when Dondozo and Tatsugiri are out on the same side in battle, Dondozo essentially swallows Tatsugiri, and it becomes one Pokemon, and it beefs up Dondozo's stats.
Wow.
To basically slacking levels. But the drawback is that you only are able to use one move per turn.
Huh. I don't think I've... Yeah, they play with synergies in the past.
Yeah, for like Follow Me or maybe like Helping Hand. You know, attacks specifically, but nothing like abilities to this to this kind.
Not to that degree.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe the closest... I'm trying to think of... Isn't Reshiram and Zekrom have like a move that if they're in the same team at the very least, like their move's better or something like that?
You might be onto something.
Like
there.
the fusion bolt or something like that. I feel like that's familiar. I have to look it up. But
yeah, let me look that up.
That feels like something. I feel like that's the closest thing to what you described, but not one eating the other.
Yeah. So Fusion Bolt is a Generation 5 signature move of Zekrom, and what it does, it inflicts damage, and the base power of Fusion Bolt will double if any Pokemon has successfully used Fusion Flare previously in the same turn. Now, it doesn't have to be like Reshiram on your side of the field, as you know, even if you're going up against a Reshiram, if they use Fusion Flare or even Victini for that matter, then I guess Fusion Bolt will double in power.
Yeah.
So it's meant to be like a synergized same team move, essentially. Yeah. Like, you know, both Pokemon using their attacks at the same time, and it doubles in power that way. That's the way I can see it.
Okay, another one I was looking at, because that's like there's another move that's just kind of like this, but it's the same thing, I guess, as long as somebody's used the move, I guess. Is the pledges, the fire pledge, grass pledge, water pledge.
I remember that.
Yeah, that's a similar thing going on.
Yeah, so that was an issue that I had. I do remember the pledges and the move tutors that, you know, were able to teach them to your at least starters. I think they're only available to the starters, but they're meant to be used in double and triple battles.
The starters and Mew. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, yeah. And so the problem is, because the rest of the game, pretty much a majority of the game, revolved around single battles, it's hard to develop these types of strategies for double battles because you hardly come across them at all. They're meant for, like, I guess, competitive play, like near the end of the game, for like Battle Towers or the Pokemon World Tournament or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. We need more solely double battle. Yeah, we need more double battle games, just like Coliseum and XD. We need to bring those back.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We definitely need them back. Or triple battles, or rotation battles.
All right, you know what? Screw it. Just do 6-on-6 battles.
Yeah, 6-on-6. Let's bring them all out.
Yeah, why not? It can be done.
Yeah.
All right, Josh. We talked about how how Pokemon has influenced our childhoods, but let's talk about the Pokemon types. Now, I have quite the issue with Pokemon types, especially how they're unbalanced, to say the least. Types such as Grass and Rock really have it worse than others, like Dragon and Steel. You know, some are more offensive oriented, like Ice, and some are more defensive oriented, like we said, Steel. And especially poison. I think poison, had it really bad early off before they started implementing new types such as fairy, and then it became more balanced. But how exactly would you balance out the types if you were to basically start from scratch?
Um, yeah, I agree that I think that's always been a issue. I feel I feel like with the types, generally speaking, I don't think there will ever be a perfect balance, and in a way, I think that's fine for Pokemon. But there does need to be, I think, some modifications to the types because yeah, right now there are definitely some glaring ones that come to mind. I know you mentioned ice being offensive, but actually ice is one that I would change because on a defensive level, they have, if I'm not mistaken, the most weaknesses, and that's one that I would probably touch on. I guess the three that come to mind are ice, bug, and steel. Those are the three that I would change. And ice and bug to improve them, and steel to nerf.
Yeah.
I actually have sort of like a idea of like what I would change with those specifically, but
Right.
yeah. Which types do you have that are that you would change specifically?
Well, first off, I'll do like an entire overhaul of what the types are all about.
Yeah, I was sort of thinking. I don't know if I want to like list them all or all my ideas, or yeah. Actually, think about it. Yeah, go in maybe one by one. We can like look at each type and see what we would change.
There we go. Okay. Sorry, I was trying to get the type chart up here real quick. So let's go ahead and let's go ahead and establish what's already been, uh, I guess, iterate what's been established. Excuse me. What Pokemon has done here. So we have, let's see, 18 types. You got normal, fighting, flying, poison, ground, rock, bug, ghost, steel, fire, water, grass, electric, psychic, ice, dragon, dark, and fairy. Is that 18?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, of course, you have all the types were here into Generation 1 except for Dark, Steel, and Fairy. And of course, one of the most overpowered types at the time was Psychic. It essentially had no weaknesses due to some glitches in Red and Blue. Ghost type dealt null damage to Psychic rather than double damage, and Bug types were barely even there. I mean, the best type, the best attacking type you had was Twin and it was an exclusive move to Beedrill, which is part poison, which of course was weak to Psychic. So Psychic just ran rampant in Gen 1.
Yeah.
And then, of course, in Gen 2, they introduced Dark to counter Psychic because they realized, oh crap, Psychic is way too overpowered. And Steel was like your major defensive type, which should, well, in the sense, along with Rock, due to most of the Steel types having high defense stats.
Yeah.
And then in Gen 6, they introduced Fairy, which countered the overpowered Dragon types that ran rampant in the first 5 generations. And it gave Poison more offensive weapons, to be a counter to Fairy, as well as Steel more offensive to Fairy as well. You get the idea.
Yeah.
But if I were to change it, I've been working on, so to speak, like my own tabletop adventures. And what I would imagine the different elements to be implemented in there, and I wanted to create something that was more all around balance. So I have 14 different elements in my version that would include normal being like a typeless element. First off, I would merge rock and ground into one element to be earth. I think that makes the most sense. I think it's kind of strange that you have rock and ground as different types to begin with. Simply because they're more or less the same thing, or they have a lot of similarities to each other. And I can understand ice being an element on its own, but it's just frozen water at the end of the day. So I would get rid of ice entirely, or at least combine it into water, and just make that a single type. Let's see, and I'll do the same thing with grass and bug. I'll just combine those into nature, because I mean, you don't have just grass. You know, I mean, if anything, it would be more like a plant type. It just doesn't make sense just to call it grass type. But I guess in the world of Pokemon, it kind of does, you know, because that's what we grew up with. So I have 14 elements. I got water, of course, electricity. I called it lightning. And then flying type is a strange one, simply because it's more like a combination of three different situations, you know, to call it flying type. You got basically the elemental air on its own, and you got basically anything with wings, and of course anything bird-like as well. So I would just like separate the bird part of that away from flying, and just call it wind, and just stick it to, like, you know, air moving from one place to another, and make that its own element. I got earth, psychic I would call magic, ghost I would call spirit. You got poison. You got it's strange to call it's a grass type situation, but it's strange to call it steel type, even though there's more than just steel that exists in the world. So I would call that metal type. I never liked fairy being when it was first implemented in Gen 6. I didn't like the name. I didn't like, you know, what it represented. If anything, I would turn that into a light type. I felt like that just makes a lot more sense, because a lot of the fairy type moves are light based. And then dark I would call shadow, and instead of dragon I would call it more or less divine type, or mythical type. But I guess what I settled on was divine. How do you feel about these changes here?
Huh. Definitely put a lot more thought into it than I had. But yeah, I guess with that was brought up, I do think, let's see, that there is a so let's see. Yeah, I could sort of see with we're going out with a lot of the choices like ground and rock being combined. I could see that. I don't know. I could sort of see it with ice as well, with water. I could still see it being its own thing, but you know, at the end of the day, it is, you know, similar enough to where that would be fine. And then let's see. Then you brought up grass and bug being together. That one I would probably personally keep separate. If anything, I sort of saw fairy as sort of I almost kind of, if I was to do any combination of types, I don't know. Actually, I think my initial reaction makes me actually kind of want to put bug and fairy together, but
Okay.
bug I think bug actually might just be fine being its own, because there are some that just don't quite. But I guess I'm just thinking of the Pokemon that are fairies right now. There's some that obviously probably don't fit that sort of, I don't know, buggish sort of look, or, you know, comparing something like a you know, Snubble with Beedrill, you know, they're definitely different enough. So I
Yeah.
don't know.
The way I see it is that an element is supposed to act like an element. You know,
Yeah.
well, they call them types in Pokemon, but they're more or less elements.
Yeah.
I don't see an anatomy of an animal being an element like dragon, the bird part of flying, or even bug. It just
I see.
does not make sense to me.
Okay, yeah, I see where you're getting at with that. I should bring that up. Yeah.
And putting
If we're going
steel
with just
type as an
element, sure.
element is kind of stretching it as well.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it as far as, I guess, element types, but when we are, I guess, thinking in the realm of elements, yeah, I could see where, yeah, combining some of those together would make sense. Because, yeah, I mean, you do have a point like bug, flying, and dragon. Well, especially bug and dragon. I guess flying's kind of maybe a 50-50
Well,
in my
yeah,
perspective, but I could sort of I could sort of see it being air, but
air,
it does
yeah.
sort of make you think more of birds and or flying creatures, and they don't necessarily have to. It could just be like a tornado looking thing or something.
No, I got no issue
So
with air being an element. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean it
yeah,
absolutely
yeah,
needs to be a type, but they're also like implementing, say like peck as a move to be a flying type move, even though it's, if you really think about it, it's just a bird like jabbing with its beak. Like what part of that is flying type or air type
yeah,
at all? You know,
yeah.
or even like roost, for instance, when a bird just kind of just lands there. How is that a flying type?
Mm,
In my opinion, it's just kind of
yeah,
weird. I want to go a step further and implement the different weaknesses and resistances that each of these elements would have, because I put some thought in. Well, okay, so I put thought into it about as far as what their weaknesses might be, but not so much resistances. Because I guess in my simplified version of it, it would be one and the same. If you're weak to something, then the other way around, that type would be resistant to to that other type. You know what I'm saying? So, for instance,
yeah.
I got nature. I got excuse me. Let me start with all three. Excuse me. All elements have three weaknesses and resistance. They go both ways. So starting with nature, I got it weak. Excuse me. It's strong against earth, water, and lightning. Simply because let's see, the electric type is resistant to grass type in Pokemon. That's how I thought that would work well in that regard.
Okay.
And then I have fire strong against metal, nature, and poison. Poison specifically, because fire just like lights it up and blows up toxic chemicals because they're flammable, at least in that sense. Water, I have it strong against earth, wind, and fire. Are you able to see the screen, by the way?
Yes, I can see the screen.
Lightning, I have it strong against water, metal, and wind. Metal specifically because it's conductive to electricity. Wind, I have it strong against earth, simply because in Pokemon or flying types are null and void against ground types, so that makes sense in my mind. Even though, of course, I combined rock and ground into one, and flying is originally weak to rock. Just completely disregarded that. It's also strong. Wind is strong against nature and fire, because wind can put out fires. If you, it's like blowing out a candle in my mind. Earth, I have it strong against lightning, metal, and fire, just like in Pokemon. Magic, I have it strong against lightning. Now that's a bit of a stretch. I think I have magic strong against lightning because I needed a third strength from magic and nothing else fit. Because I also have it strong against poison and spirits, which in Pokemon, of course, it's the other way around. Spirit is strong against magic. Magic is just one of those things. Let's take a look at the Pokemon type chart. What is Psychic actually strong against here?
So psychic deals is super effective against fighting type, poison type.
Yeah, so it doesn't make sense for fighting is along the same lines as Bug and Dragon, and the
Mm,
half of flying.
yeah,
It's just striking really hard.
yeah.
It doesn't make sense to make fighting its own type. If anything, it's more typeless than anything else. So that's why I kind of got rid of that.
Mm,
So if we get rid of fighting, then Psychic is only strong against poison. It's its only strength. Unless you're Gen 1 Psychic and you're strong against everything. So I had to kind of make some liberties here as far as what else it would be strong against, to
yeah.
balance out the weaknesses here. So that's why I chose Lightning and just kind of flipped around Spirit to be weak to Magic. Spirit itself, have it strong against Shadow, which I believe in Pokemon is the other way around as well. I swear I put a lot more thought into this than it seems like. Also have it strong against. Oh, excuse me. Divine, which is like the dragon type, and of course we've already established it's strong against magic. Poison is strong against water, simply because if you poison water, it becomes tainted water. It's just really bad water. I mean, we know how pollution goes here in the real world. It just makes sense. Poison is strong against nature for the same reasons, and it's strong against light because that's generally how it goes in Pokemon, and it kind of just makes sense. Metal, I have it strong against poison, wind, and light. Wind in particular, because if you build a metal structure like skyscrapers, it's barely affected against wind, unless it's like a tornado. Then I guess they're screwed.
Yeah.
Light, I have it strong against spirit, shadow, and divine. Kind of goes without saying. Let's see, fairy type is strong against dark and in Pokemon, but if spirit and shadow are more or less linked to like rock and ground would be, it makes sense to have it strong against spirit as well. Plus, it's like the age-old, good versus evil story that you see in most other, especially in like cartoons and stuff. Spirit and shadow are embodiments of evil, and light is the embodiment of good. And so good, would just trump evil in this sense. So that's what I have here. Shadow, I have it trumping spirit, magic, and light. So it kind of goes both ways. You got light trumping shadow and shadow trumping light. So I think I've seen this specifically, got this idea from a Puzzle and Dragons game, of all things, where it has like different elements implemented in that game, and they have light and dark kind of counteracting one another. So I thought it just made sense in this sense. And then divine, you have it trumping shadow, divine, and magic. So it's a dragon type situation where basically in order to fight dragon, you need a dragon to go super effective against one another. Looking at this, are there any changes you would like to implement here, or do you have any questions?
Let's see. So, yeah, there were a couple of things that, I guess I have. There's a couple of things to touch on that I think that I generally had in perspective of Pokemon. Versions, because I hadn't necessarily compared it to the chart, but or it's the first time seeing the chart. But there was one, for example, lightning, being super effective against metal. That was one of the things that when I brought up steel was one I mentioned I would probably nerf. That was kind of one of those things. Was that I thought it would make sense if steel would be weak to electric, because conducting electricity and whatnot. And
that's what's implemented here. I have it.
Yeah,
metal
so
weak to lightning.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I would say, generally speaking, it all works pretty well. I understand that you're trying to get 3s across the board. I see.
Yeah, I tried really hard to keep it consistent. Yep.
See why you're trying to make sense of magic and lightning, but yeah, I understand where that's coming from. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
In no other circumstance does that make sense. You kind of really have to think real hard about it. I don't know if that's something I would definitely want to keep, but it's like a process of elimination kind of situation here.
Yeah. I think something like this would balance things out. Trying to. Yeah, I guess I would say, without having played, I guess, or try to play test this version of the game, I guess. I would say that generally speaking, it all seems, sounds, makes sense. Nothing stands out to me anyway. That's unlike, I guess, some of the type matchups in Pokemon. Nothing here at least stands out as outside of the magic lightning one, I would say. It seems like generally speaking, that all generally makes sense. Because another, if I didn't bring this up, I do agree with the poison water. You know, giving poison maybe a little bit of a boost with doing extra damage to water. I think that makes sense.
Okay, let
For
me
the same reason.
interrupt you here for a second. I apologize.
Sure.
It just occurred to me that I realized why magic is strong against spirit, because just like light and shadow, I had spirit
Yep.
and magic kind of counteract each other in the
Oh,
same
okay. Got
same
it.
way. And the reason magic and lightning, or magic strong against lightning, is a bit of a stretch is because, like I brought up before, psychic only has two strengths in Pokemon.
Mm.
It's strong against fighting and it's strong against poison. And that's all I had to work with from there. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, we already got rid of fighting for reasons I've already specified. So what else, kind of makes sense? Like I said, process of elimination led me to here, and of course I don't, I don't love it, but it's something that I can understand. I can deal
Yeah.
with.
It's um. Let's see. Yeah. Generally speaking, it's fine. I do. There is a sort of, I would say, sort of a charm in Pokemon's type chart that, uh, in that it is very different compared to most. Because I will say, like looking at this chart, another thing that comes to mind is, well, I've sort of seen this in every game. You know, fire, water, grass, all sort of, are all sort of same. You got, light and dark. You know, they're counteractive with each other. There is sort of a sense of, well, I've sort of seen this before, and well, now while Pokemon's not necessarily completely different or anything, because I guess the fire, water, grass, they all sort of have a synergy, I guess, there of one's weak to the other. I'll give it credit that it did try to be a little bit more, I guess, original. And I'm not necessarily poking at the charts of not being original, because there is some originality, but there are some things that I feel that I think Pokemon at least tries to do a little different with the parts to just be to not be too cliche, or to be the same as any other type advantage disadvantage sort of things.
Right.
So that's I don't want to say that in a means of like that's like a negative or anything with the chart. It's because it is good and it is balanced, and I feel like that is something that not having play tested anyway, balanced, I suppose. The next question, I suppose, after doing all of this is looking at each Pokemon and seeing how to manipulate the attacks and defenses and special attacks and special defenses and such to mirror things out. Because, for example, I guess while Ice, is noted as like a defensive or as a really offensive, I guess, type. It's really that way, I guess, because not only the type advantages and such, but Pokemon are generally geared that way, and the rock types and steel types, while they have a lot more, I guess, resistances, of course, their stats typically, reflect that. But that isn't always the case. I say typically because Rampardos is one of those that comes to mind as having the best attack stat in the game, at least since Generation 7. I haven't looked kind of recently on that, but Rampardos is a rock type, so
Right.
I suppose there are always exceptions, but
Yeah, that would be my next
yeah.
set of questions. Is like, given some of the Pokemon that you know of, which ones make sense to change types?
Ones to change types. Let's see. That's actually a pretty good question.
One that stands out to me is the Charizard Paradox. You have it as a fire flying, but it's clearly a dragon type. Why is it not a dragon type?
Yeah, I do think that I do like it to an extent that it does, at least it gives Charizard a little bit more differences and weaknesses and resistances compared to the average dragon, but it isn't a dragon because, it isn't, dragon type, I guess, but I don't know. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I can, but I do agree that Charizard is clearly a dragon looking, probably should be dragon. Maybe it could have been fire dragon and then give it levitate or something, but then that wouldn't mirror the typical, I don't know, basic Pokemon or a starter Pokemon having their, um, starting abilities.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah, I gotcha. Let's see. Some others, I would make at least a Gyarados, possibly part dragon. Let's see. To stick with Groudon's typing of fire ground, I would make Kyogre maybe well, at least at the time, a water ice type. But since I got rid of ice, I don't even know what I would make it. Dual type something. But there's a lot less types to go around. But sticking to Pokemon types, I would make it a water ice type. I think that would make the best sense for Kyogre.
That makes sense. I think there's there is I think I guess as far as type changes and such or additions or something, I guess I tend to look at maybe some of the earlier ones that may have not gotten a change, although they have sort of fixed that with the region Pokemon, kind of giving them some diversity and such.
Yeah,
But
the regional variants.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that has helped some. But that I think of but I do wonder if they could have given Electabuzz or Magmar, for example, maybe given them another type, maybe.
Ooh, I would have liked that.
Something of I don't know whether it's with Magmar, whether it's I don't know a ground or rock, since it's kind of volcano, or
Well,
something like
the Hisuian Arcanine, Growlithe and Arcanine are part fire rock type, so I guess in a sense that's kind of like
yeah,
what you're going for.
yeah.
They changed
That's the other.
Magnemite and
That's
Magneton into part electric and steel type when steel type was introduced in Generation 2, so that was a good change.
That's true. I guess they haven't completely neglected, because I guess they also gave a lot of Pokemon like Clefairy and Wigglytuff fairy type when they weren't originally.
Right.
So.
Yeah, back when Fairy was first introduced, and they did like an overhaul of normals into Fairy.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I suppose some of the one thing that I think that they could maybe do a little, maybe they don't have to shy away too much, but I guess I'm speaking normal types. I was sort of thinking maybe they could have given maybe some Pokemon a little bit more, maybe lean into that a little bit, but maybe not too much, because I understand it's weak to fighting, and there's also an advantage of being immune to Ghost. But sometimes there's a couple that come out as like, they could have given it a second type, and sometimes I do think like I like Mareep, I guess, and it sort of seems like a normal type Pokemon, but it's an electric type, which I like, but it could have been normal electric, I guess.
Oh, I could see that, yeah, a normal electric. And then of course they gave Mega Ampharos a mane and made it a dragon because of it. Yeah, no, I completely understand. I could see like Dunsparce maybe being like a normal ground type.
Yeah.
Or maybe even a normal bug type, since it's I mean, what even is a Dunsparce? Like a beetle?
Something like that, yeah.
I could see Ursaring
I'm surprised
being a
they
normal
finally
fighting
gave
type.
it an evolution on Scarlet and
Yeah,
Violet.
yeah, they just gave it like an extra abdomen.
And then that was it, yeah. So creative.
Did you see the Dunsparce evolution fake mod from well, I think it was introduced in Pokemon Uranium, but it was basically a Dunsparce and it made a normal dragon type.
Oh wow.
It looked
Okay. That's
really,
pretty cool.
really cool. I could see Porygon line maybe being a normal psychic type, or maybe even a normal ghost type, since it's supposed to be just data.
Yeah. Yeah, it could at least have a second type to play around a little bit more with, because if I recall correctly, it has moves that help change its type, right?
It has conversion. Yeah, and
Conversion,
also
yeah.
learns Psybeam natively as well upon level up.
Nice.
I think it'd be good to make it like a normal psychic type, in my opinion. Let's talk
Yeah.
about Lugia. How do we feel about it being a psychic flying type instead of a water flying type?
Yeah, that's. I guess, yeah, I will say, I do know for a period of time, I would think probably a good, like, I don't know how long, but I know for years I had always thought Lugia was a water flying, or at least water something, as I don't know, but I would say, I mean, I've known for a while now that it's been psychic flying, but I think one of the, a couple of big factors, I guess, is that one, it always seems, whether it's in the anime or whatnot, it always seems like its appearance always like comes out of water or is around water for some reason, or the
Yeah,
ocean.
because it
And the
lives
second
under
thing
the
is,
ocean.
yeah. And and then the second thing is that, it's like the counter to Ho-Oh and Ho-Oh's fire, so it just
Yep.
sort of made sense why, like, in my mind for years I thought it was water type. I don't recall at what point I realized it was psychic, but I do know or it was psychic flying. But I do know, like, when I did come to realization, it was definitely a big surprise. That was definitely one of those. That was like, learning that, spelling Ninetales isn't the way you would think it would be spelled. I guess it was, you'd think it'd be spelled like Tails and it's Tales.
Oh yeah, you know what? You do have
like
a point.
It's like one of those little fact things. It's like, wow, like I've been looking at this for years. No.
Oh, you know
Ninetales is
what?
another one of those.
Yeah,
that I
Ninetales.
fell
I
for
could
for a long
see.
time.
I could see it being like a fire psychic type, of all things.
Yeah, I could. Only because now they came out with, the Finnegan line. It would almost seem too similar in my mind. But yeah, I could see that.
Absolutely.
It'd just be another fox that's
Yeah.
fire psychic. But yeah, I could see that though.
Here we go. How do you feel about all the fossil Pokemon being part rock type? Would you consider them rock type before they were fossilized?
Maybe before they're fossilized, maybe not. I can see that with some, but not with all of them. Yeah, like Aerodactyl, that's kind of striking me as just flying. But I mean, I think it's fine, given it rock. I'm not against it necessarily, but it is kind of one of those things that doesn't make sense. I don't know, but maybe it makes sense in the after life, I guess, now being brought back up from fossil. But beforehand, like I would say it was probably just flying, or maybe it was flying grass or something. I don't know.
Holy crud. Okay, I just realized I made a mistake. Groudon is just a ground type. For some reason, I thought it was a fire ground type. So, yeah, let's make Groudon a fire ground type and Kyogre a water ice type. I did not realize that. Yeah, because it learned Eruption and Fire Blast natively. For some reason, I thought Groudon was just a straight up fire ground type.
If we did that comparison, though, or if we gave yeah, I don't know. That might make Kyogre a little bit more too powerful, I think, right? Because then Groudon would have ×4 weakness to water.
To water, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably the reason why they didn't make it a fire type.
Maybe.
Looking at some others. I could see Staraptor being like a fighting flying type. How do you feel about that?
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially once it gets the cool, I don't know, what do you call it?
The close combat
Uh,
attack.
oh yeah, I guess that. I was thinking, no, his hairstyle. I have that mohawk.
Oh yeah, the faux
Yeah,
hawk.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It could
It
definitely fly.
looks like an
Or
axe,
fighting.
like an axe hawk.
Yeah, does have an axe looking thing to it.
I like how
Sure.
the front of its feathers look like it's blood. You know, the way it's
Yeah.
painted red.
Yeah.
Very
They already
intimidating.
have the design, so might as well made it fighting.
Oh, for the longest time, I've always thought the Luxray line was an
Yeah,
electric dark type. It just looks so menacing in the way
that
it's
definitely makes
painted
sense.
black.
Especially Luxray. I could see
Yeah.
it being like electric for the first two, and then once it evolves into Luxray, it gets dark type.
Oh yeah. And then they
Yeah.
turned Megalopony into a normal fighting type. I think that makes sense
Yeah.
for the line there. Let's
Yeah.
see what else we got here. Just pointing at different Pokemon. Okay, what about Lucario makes it a steel type?
I guess because of the thing, I don't know, the spike jutting out of its gut.
And its hands. It's like the
Yeah,
only
his
thing.
hands. Yeah, that's about it.
I think
I
they-
mean, if anything, like the movies even kind of make it seem like its aura, or movies. Well, I guess I'm thinking of the movie. I guess
The
but,
movie,
you know, the
yeah.
show, the animes. You know, generally kind of give it
Anytime
like it
it's
has this
implemented.
aura stuff going on, and
Yeah.
it's like
If anything,
randomly.
I could see it as a fighting psychic type, if anything. Not a
Yeah,
steel type.
yeah.
Anyway.
I don't know. But I guess it had to. Maybe it got steel so could I don't know, resist psychic or something.
Yeah, I think they just made it a steel type so it could have a lot more resistances.
Yeah. Think so too.
Oh, is there anything else you'd like to add to this topic before we wrap it up?
Let's see. Yeah, so yeah, I want to just note that that there would been overall I think it's Pokemon's their type chart does need to be improved. I think I do think that there does need to be a little bit of an overhaul, and I do think that's like where you're going with combining the types and trying to create a balance works pretty well, I think, or it would be the better solution. Whether it's the best solution or not, I don't know. I know I expressed that I do sort of see maybe a little charm of why maybe Pokemon tries to
Yeah.
maybe make the types maybe a little different.
A
But
little
that's
unbalanced, yeah.
but it's it I do think that Pokemon has been around long enough to where there should have been changes a long time ago, or some sort of just because something got introduced in generations 1 and 2, for example, back in the early days of Pokemon before there was a meta really and things like that.
Right.
Doesn't mean that we have to stick with that or try to fix that issue by adding more types or more things. I do think Pokemon does try to do that a little bit too much of just by solving the problem, we're just going to add some things, or we'll introduce a couple of Pokemon that might be good counters to certain things. Like I guess since we brought up Lucario, I guess Lucario, for example, I feel like probably the only reason it got Steel was just so it wasn't weak to Psychic like all the other fighting types, I guess. And I don't know.
Flipping it around is probably the reason why they didn't make Gyarados or Charizard a Dragon type, is because Dragon was an overpowered type at the time. That would make those Pokemon overpowered as well. So in a way, it's like nerfing them, making them flying types.
But they sort of hint that they could been, because they're like mega evolutions. For example, Charizard gets a dragon. Even Sceptile gets dragon as a mega evolution.
That is an awesome mega evolution. I like that
so
design.
that one's actually really cool. Yeah, I think Sceptile is probably one of my favorites as far as mega evolutions are concerned.
For sure.
But yeah, I while I hadn't, I guess thought into, as far as, doing a complete, overhaul, of things, I do think an overhaul like that is needed. Because there's now enough Pokemon. Pokemon's been out for a while now. The meta's kind of been generally the same. The Pokemon changed, but that's just because there's new generations and Pokemon getting their new different abilities or new abilities, things like that, and so to a degree it's that the meta changes, but not when it comes to types. And it is it just needs to be changed a little bit. I think I think that I think that in my perspective, what Pokemon needs to do is, at least, or Game Freak or whoever, Nintendo, this needs to, in the next game or something, I think one of the things that would really change things up, that I think would pull people in to try, would be something like a complete change, complete, like, take a look at the type chart and completely change it, to where it needs. I say completely, but it doesn't need to be 100% changed. Fire and water, for example, those make sense, but there are a lot of things that don't make sense. Or even if it does make sense, there needs to be a balance.
Like, how is Psychic weak to Bug? Like, how does that make sense?
Yeah, well, okay, so Psychic might be weak to Bug, but at the same time, if we're keeping Bug, I do think Bug needs to have. I personally think so. One of the things I was thinking of, like, improving Bug on, was to give it a couple of more, like, give it a buff, because it is so behind. And while if I could sort of see how maybe with Psychic, it's like a distraction or something, with the a swarm of bugs or whatever, like, I don't know, try and keeps, I don't know, maybe a Psychic distracted from being focused on their, I don't know, their abilities or whatever. I don't know, but it's but even if it doesn't, I do think, like, Bug needs something. So I think it can keep Psychic.
It's definitely what I would consider one of the weaker types. I don't think I would ever build my team around a solid Bug type unless it's like Scizor.
No,
because that's one of the standouts in my opinion. Maybe Volcarona.
Yeah, so I was about to bring up Volcarona as another one, but so outside of those two, it's really hard to say. I mean, in Beedrill's like a maybe, but just, I mean, it has a very decent attack, but that's about it. Because it's just too frail. It's a glass cannon, and
it really is.
And then everything else, it's it's hard to build around. Once in a while, I will have a Bug type. I would say outside of shoot, what was the Pokemon just left my mind? What was it?
Was it one that we just mentioned?
Shoot, yes.
Volcarona?
Not Volcarona, but
Scizor?
yeah, that one's one. And Scizor, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I would say, with the exception of Scizor and Volcarona, the only time I would really use Bug types when they happen to be in my party are for status effects reasons, or something that is playing sort of a support role, or on the one off chance that we're up against, for example, I guess since we brought up Bug and Psychic, like maybe we're up against a Psychic gym, and I do have a Bug type, it has some Bug moves, that's sure, but it'll get a seat in my 6 for the ride, and then once we're done with the gym, we'll put it back in the box. But
on top of that, in the history of Pokemon, it's always been, I guess, a running theme for Pokemon to have Bug as like your introductory type. It's generally going to be like one of the first few Pokemon that you would catch on your adventure, like Caterpie in Red and Blue, Wurmple and Ruby and Sapphire. Yeah. It,
It's a Pokemon that it is potentially a Pokemon you start with, so I feel like it's gotta be, some more love, I guess, because like I think there's going to be an attachment. I feel like, especially when people first are playing Pokemon for the first time and things like that. You know, the that's going to be one of the ones that they get. They'll get the Butterfree or they'll get Dustox or lists or whatever sort of Pokemon that you kind of start with depending on the region. But you'll probably have an attachment with it in the beginning, but it is going to be one of the first that like sort of teaches you that you have to give up some Pokemon that you really like because, well, they're just not good enough, unfortunately. So that's cool. Even if Butterfree might be your favorite, it's like, well, it's just he or she's just not cool enough to be able to withstand the other the later levels of the game.
Absolutely. The only reason I can see Bug actually being a type to begin with is because Pokemon, in a sense, is supposed to emulate what it's like to collect bugs in general, and that's what Pokemon's all about.
Thus, and therefore, I think while I hadn't thought into the degree of like, really, manipulating some of the types, I do, I do agree with where you're going at with like, excuse me, I do agree with where you're going at with making combinations like bug and grass together, or what was the other? Oh yeah, and ice and water. That was another one. Of combining those together. That makes sense. And honestly, I don't see why there being an issue at all with still starting with bug types. As grass types instead. Inevitably, we're gonna. I mean, I feel like grass is innately one of the easiest types to implement into almost any like sort of area when you start the game, unless Pokemon ever changes it to where you start in like Antarctica or something like that.
Right.
Which that would be different.
Snowy tundra.
Change up how things. Maybe make a region a bit more cold heavy or I don't know, arid heavy or something. I don't know.
Right. I can see that.
But yeah.
Yeah, if it were up to me, I would also probably implement subtypes, and that so we got rid of ice, but it's not necessarily forgotten about. But you would also have temperatures like hot, and some of these other elements are featured under these subtypes. For instance, like I would personally make fire, of course, being hot temperatured, along with electricity and light, and then you would have your cold implemented elements such as water, wind, and shadow. How do you feel about that?
I think that works. Yeah. Having subcategories, I think, if anything, it does bring like another layer into the game. That's something that, that's something I always like with any sort of strategy game. Pokemon's definitely a strategy game that's outside all the cuteness and the raising your Pokemon, things like that. There is where there is thinking of the different types and whatnots of what works against various types of Pokemon and gym leaders and things. And when you add like a subtype, that just adds another category of or layer of thinking. If you pick up Pokemon for the first time, you might, grab, some Pokemon, just some random Pokemon to, go in battle. But, you eventually learn over time, assuming you're not reading ahead or thinking ahead or anything, you eventually learn that, weaknesses, and resistances to various types. And, if that got into another layer of like maybe subtypes, and maybe that could even sort of manipulate, maybe not as heavily as the main element type, but maybe if that could even change things slightly, whatever that change is, whether it like adds a resistance or whatever it is, I think that would be kind of cool. It's like this isn't a typical electric type, but because it's the subtype, the subtype gives it a slight different change on it has one more resistance and or maybe one more special effective sort of thing going on about it or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I like that. Really adds
Just thinking
flair
off the top of
to
my
it.
head on off it all, but
For
yeah.
sure, for sure. All right. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here. We're going to end it off with our next segment of the stream, something I like to call the Hobbyist. This is the segment where I ask my guests what they've been doing, working on, or having fun with lately. Josh, what have you been working on lately?
Oh. Moving.
Hey, you got a new job, didn't you?
Yeah, I got a new job recently. It's requiring me to relocate. So I'll admit, as far as like any projects and things like that, that's unfortunately been put on hold. So it's a bit of an awkward timing, I suppose, of things. But outside of that, what will eventually, I guess, get resumed again. I am working on a podcast with a group that I play a Pathfinder with.
Well, that's amazing.
We meet on a weekly basis. So
have you already been working on that?
We have, yeah. Nothing's been posted yet, but there are 2 episodes as we speak that are ready. We're wanting to get them, we want to sort of get a pile, I guess, before we start, sharing them. We want to try to keep like a schedule, or I guess, or like a weekly basis of.
Yeah, that's completely understandable. You want to give a shout out to it? What's it called?
We're still working on the name, but we haven't come up with a name yet. But yeah, that's something. That's definitely something on the to do. I do have
guess. It's Pathfinder 3.0.
Yeah. I do have a channel called Silverhex, and that is an idea to maybe put it on there. But since this is kind of more of a team collaboration, there is we do want to make a channel revolved around this project of these podcasts. Yeah. So, but at this time, I guess the name is pending, but that's I'm sure I'll bring it up on any of my other videos on Silverhex. Which, that being said, of course, that's been postponed as well. I haven't done a video in a little while, but I have been doing a lot of Pathfinder focused things. I do have a passion for various other topics like Pokemon, and which is on the channel as well, as I've nuzlocked for a little while, as I mentioned before, and still am, and still recording my nuzlocking. The Vintage White, for example, I'm still working on that. I currently have a run that's going very strong, and if it is successful, we'll definitely be posting that. But let's see, outside of those, I guess that's kind of about it. Those are the 2 project things that are a bit on hold at the moment, but we'll be resuming probably next month-ish.
All right. All right, so the next segment I will feature is Free Games of the Week. So this is the segment of the podcast that I would like to bring attention to free games that you can pick up with various subscriptions. All right. Epic Game Store, Free Games of the Week. Got The Big Con, Town of Salem 2, Industria, and Lisa, the Definitive Edition.
Town of Salem 2. Yeah, I've played that game. Actually, I played it when it was a beta, and for the first maybe 2 or 3 weeks thereafter. That one's pretty fun. If you like deceptive games that are similar to like Werewolf or Mafia, little party games, but much more in depth than that, I would say. So, like that sort of those sorts of games, I think Town of Salem 2 is definitely up your alley.
All right, moving on over to Amazon Prime. If you have a Prime membership through Amazon, you also get these off of gaming.amazon.com. Free games they're featuring is Fallout games, thanks to the new release Fallout show, including Fallout 76. They had Fallout Tactics, and I thought I saw as well, but I guess I took it down. Bus Simulator 21, The Next Stop, Black Desert, Rose Riddle, The Fairy Tale Detective Edition, Dexter Stardust, Adventures in Outer Space, Faraway, Arctic Escape, Drawn, Trail of Shadows, Faraway 2, Jungle Escape, Through the Darkest of Times, Bridge to Another World, Secrets of the Nutcracker, Pearls of Atlantis, The Cove, Chivalry 2, and Demon. Have you played any of these, Josh?
Nice. That's quite a list. The only one that stood out would be Fallout, and I got a similar deal with Steam, because around the time when Prime brought out Fallout, Steam had some sort of, maybe not free, I guess I could have gotten it for free, but they did have some sort of discount thing on all Fallouts, so I did get the earlier ones, because I played Fallout 3, New Vegas and 4, but I've never played the older versions, so I am eager in trying those.
Absolutely. I dabbled with Fallout 76, but it's one of those games that I'd much rather play with friends rather than alone. Let's see. Moving on to PlayStation Plus, I have fixed my mistake. We have the games that are free for this month with the subscription. You got Immortals of Avium, Minecraft Legends, and Skull, the Hero Slayer. Have you heard of any of these?
Immortals, yeah. Minecraft?
Minecraft Legends. Like the RPG version of it, I think.
Huh.
That's lead your allies in strategic battles against piglins set on ravaging the rich, lush biomes of the overworld.
Interesting. Yeah. It's been a little while since I played Minecraft. I did play that for a good few years. At some point, I eventually faded away from it, but I think it definitely took a good 5 or 6 years of my life. So.
yeah, I believe my wife would say the same thing.
I'll have to see. I have to look into Legends, see if there's what's different about it.
All right.
Might be interested.
On NSO, I think it's the same thing. They brought in new games to NSO, which is Wrecking Crew 98, Super R-Type, and Amazing Hebereke. Have you heard of any of
them? No, I have not.
Really? I say I played Wrecking Crew on the NES back in the day, but this is specifically Wrecking Crew 98, so I don't know about it.
Okay.
Like a Japanese exclusive one.
Wrecking Crew, yeah, that one sounds familiar.
There's an exclusive stage for it on Brothers.
Okay, maybe that's where I've heard it from then, or something about it seemed familiar. So yeah, Smash Brothers, I could see that. Smash Brothers did introduce me to some games that I never heard of before. Like the one that Ness and Lucas are from.
Earthbound.
Earthbound,
or
yeah.
Mother if you live in Japan.
Yes. Mother was what I was thinking of, but then I was like, I don't think it's Mother. Yeah, Earthbound. Okay. I guess I was thinking correctly. But anyway.
Never heard of Amazing Hebereke. That's just a Japanese exclusive as well up until now. It originally released for the Super Famicom. There you go, back in 1990. Until now.
All right.
Alright, so moving on, we have the poll of the week. Which generation were you first introduced into Pokemon? You got 5 options here: Generation 1 or 2, Generation 3 or 4, 5 or 6, 7 or 8, or 9 and all.
Yeah, I think that would be. I think that you might as well just say how old are you, because I feel like everybody's going to answer based on when they were a child getting introduced to Pokemon. So for like you and me, yeah, that's Generation 1. But I mean, we see somebody that puts in Generation 8 or 9, then it's like, all right, well, you're still in grade school, so. Or if they do Generation 4 or 5, then it's like, well, now that's kind of Gen Z. So
I feel like whichever generation that you are around 10 years old probably be the generation you would be most like interested or introduced to it.
Yeah, because that being said, even though I was introduced to it in first generation, I mean, the one that stands out to me the most is Sinnoh, Generation 4. So
Yeah,
that's the one that, when I think of Pokemon, that's what comes to mind the most vividly.
agreed. Absolutely.
Yeah, makes sense. Because like 1 and 2, like I was aware of Pokemon. I know I played the game, but I had to play it a little bit later when I was a little bit older and actually understood what I was doing. And instead of just messing around just because I was a kid. I think Ruby and Sapphire was the first that actually played the game with a more like mental mindset of okay, I'm playing the game to actually play the game instead
Yeah,
of I don't know,
yeah.
instead of kid
Understand
me.
what's going on. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I actually understand what's going on. uh, and then yeah, like I said, I guess Sinnoh, the Generation 4 was then the one that yeah, I guess became the most vivid. And I think part of that too, I guess not only this, I did mention it because of the story and stuff. I know you're bringing up the poll stuff. I apologize to sidetrack a little bit,
Oh, you're
but
fine.
uh, but one of the it just now occurred to me another thing about fourth generation that really stood out to me too was the Pokemon contest. I thought that was actually a really cool feature.
Yeah.
I actually really enjoyed doing that.
I believe they were called the Super Contest in Generation 4 and introduced in
Yeah,
Generation 3. But yeah,
yeah,
they
yeah. They
did
were
set
introduced in
themselves apart.
three. Yeah, I think. I mean, I could be wrong, but I think four. They just did more with it. But I could be wrong on that. Maybe they were the
Yeah,
same.
because you could dress up your Pokemon.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, I do recall fifth generation doing that with black and white. So like maybe I was remembering black and white dressing your Pokemon up. But okay, yeah.
Uh,
Fourth generation did have a gym leader that also kind of revolved around that. I forget her name, but she was the ghost type leader. Um,
which generation?
Sinnoh fourth generation, there was a ghost type gym leader that
Oh
revolved around
yeah,
the fashion show.
Fantina,
Um,
the
Fantina, yeah,
art home gym leader. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, she was
yeah,
like a contest official.
yeah.
I remember that absolutely. If you in the audience want to take part of this poll, I will have this up on my YouTube channel in the community tabs there if you want to take part. Next up, we have featured comments. These are the comments that are posted from previous videos. If you want to be featured or have a chance to be featured on videos in the future, by all means, put a comment down below. And that's all there is to it. Was there anything else you want to add before we log off?
I don't have anything else to add.
All right. Thank you all for watching this episode of Tales from the Basement. Be sure to check in every week for fresh content. And if you like what you watched here today, make sure you mash both of those like and subscribe buttons and that bell to be notified for more episodes. Sure. I am Joe, and I am here with my good friend Josh. And this has been Tales from the Basement. I will see you all. Bye bye.